We've already decided who gets what. You get nothing, my Uncle Lawrence announced with that smug smile I'd grown to despise over the years. His words echoed through my grandmother's living room in Portland, Oregon, where we had all gathered for what should have been a solemn moment of reading Dorothy's will. Instead, it felt like watching vultures divide their prey. My name is Annette. I'm 29 years old, and I've spent most of my life being treated like the family disappointment. While my cousins Patricia and Vincent sat there nodding in agreement with their father Lawrence, I felt the familiar sting of rejection wash over me. They had apparently spent the week since Grandma Dorothy's funeral dividing up her house, her savings account, and even her jewelry collection among themselves, as if I didn't exist. The house goes to Patricia since she's married and needs the space, Lawrence continued, gesturing toward his daughter, who was already mentally redecorating. Vincent gets the savings account to help with his business venture, and I'll handle the jewelry and other valuables. He looked at me with barely concealed disdain. You can take some of her books or kitchen utensils if you want. That seems more your speed. I sat quietly in the corner chair where Grandma Dorothy used to read to me when I was little, watching this performance with growing determination. They had no idea what was coming. Benjamin Walsh, the family lawyer who had served our family for years, shuffled his papers uncomfortably. Even he seemed disturbed by their presumptuous behavior, but Lawrence had always been the type to steamroll over anyone who dared question his authority. Patricia leaned forward eagerly. When can we start clearing out her things? I want to have the house ready for my family by next month. The casualness with which she discussed dismantling our grandmother's life made my stomach turn. This was the same woman who had visited Dorothy maybe twice in the past 3 years, and only when she needed money. Vincent chimed in. I've already talked to the bank about transferring the accounts. They said it should be straightforward once we have the will. His confidence was remarkable considering he hadn't even bothered to attend Dorothy's 80th birthday party last year, claiming he was too busy with work. But I knew something they didn't know. As Benjamin prepared to read the official document, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small USB flash drive. The weight of it felt insignificant in my palm, but I knew it contained the power to shatter their carefully laid plans. Dorothy had been much smarter than any of them realized, and she had prepared for this exact moment with the precision of someone who had watched her family's true nature reveal itself over the years. Growing up in this family had taught me early that love was conditional, and I apparently never met the conditions. Lawrence had always been the golden child in Dorothy's household, or so everyone believed. He was the successful financial planner who drove expensive cars and lived in the prestigious West Hills neighborhood. Patricia followed in his footsteps, marrying a doctor and producing 2 children who were paraded around as the family's pride and joy. Vincent, though younger and less established, had inherited Lawrence's arrogance and sense of entitlement. Then there was me, the daughter of Dorothy's youngest child, who had died in a car accident when I was 12. I had come to live with Dorothy not out of choice, but out of necessity. My father had never been in the picture, and with my mother gone, Dorothy was my only family. While Lawrence and his children saw me as a burden, Dorothy had welcomed me with open arms and genuine warmth that I had never experienced before. "You're my little sunshine," Dorothy used to tell me during those early years when grief threatened to consume me. She would sit with me for hours, helping with homework, listening to my fears about fitting in at school, and assuring me that I belonged in her heart, if nowhere else. While Lawrence's visits were brief and focused on what Dorothy could do for him, I spent every day after school in her kitchen, learning her recipes and listening to stories about her life. The irony wasn't lost on me that Lawrence, who had built his career advising people about financial planning and family wealth management, had completely misunderstood his own mother's intentions. He saw Dorothy as an aging woman who needed his guidance and protection, never recognizing that she was still sharp as a tack and perfectly capable of making her own decisions. Patricia would call occasionally to complain about her husband or ask for help with the grandchildren's expenses, while Vincent treated Dorothy like an ATM, showing up whenever his latest business venture needed funding. But I had been there through everything. When Dorothy was diagnosed with diabetes, I learned how to monitor her blood sugar and prepare diabetic-friendly meals. When she fell and broke her hip at 78, I took a leave of absence from my job at North Peak Engineering to care for her during recovery. While the others were busy with their own lives, I was the one who drove her to doctor appointments, organized her medications, and made sure she never felt alone or forgotten. Dorothy had noticed the difference in treatment, though she rarely spoke about it directly. Sometimes I would catch her watching Lawrence's interactions with a sad expression, or see her shake her head when Patricia would rush through a phone call without asking how Dorothy was feeling. She had a way of observing people's character that came from decades of experience, and she had been taking careful notes on all of us for years. The depth of her awareness would shock them all very soon. The moment that changed everything happened 6 months before Dorothy's death, though I didn't realize its significance at the time. I had arrived at her house for our usual Sunday dinner to find her sitting at her kitchen table with tears in her eyes. Lawrence had just left after what appeared to be a heated conversation, and Dorothy looked more hurt than I had ever seen her. "He thinks I'm losing my mind," she said quietly, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "Lawrence came here today with papers from some lawyer, trying to get me to sign over power of attorney to him. He said it was for my own protection, that I couldn't be trusted to handle my own affairs anymore." I sat down beside her, feeling anger build in my chest. "What did you tell him?" Dorothy straightened her shoulders with the dignity that had always defined her. "I told him that my mind is perfectly clear, and if he ever tried something like that again, he would regret it. But Annette, the way he looked at me, like I was already dead, and he was just waiting to collect his inheritance." She shook her head sadly. "I've worked my whole life to build something to leave to my family, but I'm starting to wonder if they see me as anything more than a bank account." That conversation had been a turning point for Dorothy, though she hadn't shared the full extent of her plans with me until much later. Over the following months, I noticed changes in her behavior. She became more secretive about her legal affairs, mentioning appointments with lawyers that she hadn't used before. She also started asking me more questions about my dreams and plans for the future, as if she was trying to understand what truly mattered to me. The revelation came 3 weeks before her death, when she called me over on a Thursday evening and led me to her bedroom. She pulled out a shoebox from under her bed and opened it to reveal a small video camera and several legal documents I had never seen before. "Annette, I need you to understand something very important," she began, her voice serious but calm. "I've been watching this family for years, and I've finally seen everyone's true character. Lawrence thinks I'm a foolish old woman who needs his protection, but I've been planning something that will teach all of them about assumptions and respect." She explained that she had created a fake will, the one that Benjamin Walsh would read at the official gathering. It was designed to sound plausible enough that Lawrence and his children would believe it reflected her actual intentions. But the real will, she told me, was locked in a safe deposit box at First National Bank downtown, along with instructions for her actual attorney, Theodore Wilson. "The reading will be quite a show," Dorothy said with a mischievous gleam in her eyes that reminded me why I had always loved her so much. The day of the will reading arrived gray and drizzly, typical Portland weather that seemed to match the family's mood. Lawrence had insisted we meet at Dorothy's house rather than at Benjamin's office, claiming it would be more appropriate to handle family business in familiar surroundings. What he really wanted was to maintain control over the proceedings and ensure that everything went according to his predetermined plan. Patricia arrived first, already carrying boxes and bubble wrap. "I figured we could start packing some things right after the reading," she explained to Lawrence, completely ignoring me as I sat on Dorothy's favorite couch. "I've already measured the dining room set, and it will fit perfectly in our new breakfast nook." Vincent showed up 20 minutes late, looking distracted and checking his phone constantly. "Sorry, I was dealing with some investors," he said, though I suspected he had been out drinking the night before based on his appearance. "So, how long is this going to take? I have a conference call at 3. The casual disregard they showed for Dorothy's memory made my heart ache, but it also strengthened my resolve. They had no idea that their grandmother had been far more perceptive than they ever gave her credit for. While they saw an aging woman who needed their guidance, Dorothy had been carefully orchestrating a lesson about character and consequences that would reshape their understanding of family dynamics forever. Benjamin Walsh arrived precisely at 1 o'clock, carrying his briefcase and wearing the expression of a man who was about to deliver unwelcome news. He had worked with our family for over 15 years, handling various legal matters, and I could tell he was uncomfortable with Lawrence's presumptuous behavior. Benjamin was old school in his approach to legal proceedings, believing that wills should be read with dignity and respect rather than treated like a shopping list. "Before we begin," Lawrence announced, standing up like he was chairing a board meeting, "I want everyone to understand that we've already discussed the practical distribution of Mother's assets. Patricia will take the house since she has a family. Vincent will handle the financial accounts to help with his business expansion, and I'll manage the valuables and personal items. This should make the actual reading much more efficient." Benjamin looked at him with barely concealed disapproval. "Mr. Lawrence, the purpose of this gathering is to read your mother's will and learn her actual wishes. Any decisions about distribution need to be based on her legal instructions, not family assumptions." Of course," Lawrence waved dismissively. "But Mother and I discussed these arrangements many times. She understood that I would know how to handle everything appropriately." I had heard this lie so many times over the years that it barely affected me anymore. Lawrence had a remarkable ability to rewrite history in his favor, convincing himself that conversations that had never happened were actually detailed planning sessions. Dorothy had complained to me repeatedly about his tendency to make decisions on her behalf without consulting her actual preferences. Patricia was already taking pictures of various pieces of furniture with her phone, while Vincent had wandered into the kitchen to examine Dorothy's collection of vintage appliances. Their behavior was so callous that even Benjamin seemed taken aback by their lack of basic decorum. This was supposed to be a moment of honoring Dorothy's memory and learning about her final wishes, but they had turned it into a treasure hunt. As Benjamin opened his briefcase and pulled out the official-looking document that would serve as the fake will, I felt in my purse for the USB drive Dorothy had given me. The weight of it seemed to pulse with anticipation, like a heartbeat counting down to the moment when everything would change. Dorothy's plan was about to unfold exactly as she had designed it, and I was the only one in the room who understood what was coming. Benjamin cleared his throat and began reading the fake will in his formal legal voice. "I, Dorothy Elizabeth Morrison, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." The document was carefully crafted to sound authentic, while containing just enough ambiguity to make Lawrence and his children confident in their predetermined arrangements. As Benjamin read through the standard legal language about debts and funeral arrangements, I watched Lawrence's expression grow increasingly satisfied. Patricia was nodding along, mentally calculating the value of various bequests, while Vincent seemed bored by the formalities and eager to get to the financial details. None of them noticed that Benjamin kept glancing at me with a curious expression, as if he sensed there was more to this situation than met the eye. "To my son Lawrence," Benjamin continued, "I leave my personal jewelry collection and household furnishings, recognizing his responsibility as head of the family." Lawrence actually smiled at this, probably already planning how to liquidate Dorothy's diamond rings and gold bracelets. "To my granddaughter Patricia, I leave my house and property, trusting that she will make good use of the space for her growing family." Patricia practically bounced in her chair with excitement. "I knew she would understand," she whispered to Vincent. "Grandma always said the house should stay in the family." This was completely untrue. Dorothy had never expressed any such sentiment to me, and I had spent far more time with her than Patricia had over the past decade. But Patricia had a gift for creating false memories that supported her desires, much like her father. "To my grandson Vincent," Benjamin read, "I leave my savings and investment accounts, hoping that he will use this foundation to build a successful future." Vincent finally looked up from his phone, showing the first real interest he had displayed since arriving. Dorothy's accounts contained nearly $50,000, which would be a significant boost to whatever business scheme he was currently pursuing. Then Benjamin reached the section that Lawrence had been waiting for. "Regarding my granddaughter Annette," he read, and I could feel the family's attention shift toward me with barely concealed smugness. "I recognize that she has been a devoted companion during my later years, and I hope she will find comfort in the knowledge that our time together was meaningful to me." The patronizing tone of this section was exactly what Lawrence would have expected from what he considered Dorothy's sentimental nature. Patricia actually rolled her eyes, while Vincent smirked. They saw this as confirmation that I would receive nothing of significant value, just empty words about emotional support and devotion. "However," Benjamin continued, and something in his voice made me realize he was about to deviate from the script. "Before we conclude this reading, there is one additional item to address." He looked directly at me. "Annette, do you have something you would like to share with the family?" This was my moment. I reached into my purse and pulled out the USB drive Dorothy had entrusted to me, holding it up so everyone could see it. The small device looked insignificant in my palm, but I knew it contained the power to destroy every assumption they had made about Dorothy's intentions and their own importance in her life. "Dorothy asked me to give this to the lawyer during the will reading," I said quietly. "She said it contained something important that the family needed to see before any decisions were made about her estate." Lawrence's confident expression faltered slightly. "What is that? Mother never mentioned any video or recordings to me." Benjamin took the drive and moved toward Dorothy's laptop, which was still set up on her desk in the living room. "Let's see what Dorothy wanted us to know." The laptop screen flickered to life, and suddenly Dorothy's face appeared in vivid detail. She was sitting in her bedroom, wearing the blue cardigan I had given her for her birthday, looking directly into the camera with an expression of determination I had rarely seen from her. The timestamp in the corner showed the recording was made just 2 weeks before her death, when she was supposedly too frail to handle her own affairs. "Hello, my family," Dorothy began, her voice clear and strong. "If you are watching this recording, it means that my will has been read, and you believe you understand my final wishes. I'm afraid you are mistaken." The room fell completely silent. Lawrence's face had gone pale, while Patricia and Vincent exchanged confused glances. Benjamin leaned forward, clearly as surprised as everyone else by this development. "I have spent the past several months watching all of you reveal your true characters," Dorothy continued, "and I must say that I am deeply disappointed in what I have observed. Lawrence, you have treated me like an incompetent child who needs your protection, while constantly pressuring me to sign over control of my assets to you. You see me as a burden to be managed rather than a person deserving of respect." Lawrence shot up from his chair. "This is ridiculous." Mother was clearly confused in her final weeks. She was on medication that affected her judgment. Dorothy's voice from the recording seemed to respond directly to his objection. "I know that some of you will claim this recording was made during a period of mental incompetence, but let me be very clear about my state of mind. Last week, I completed complex mathematical calculations with my financial advisor, revised my insurance policies, and had a lengthy discussion with my doctor about treatment options. My mind is perfectly sharp, and my decisions are based on years of careful observation." Patricia was staring at the screen in horror. "Grandma, what are you saying? We've always tried to take care of you." "Patricia," Dorothy's image continued, as if she could hear the protest. "You have visited me exactly 12 times in the past 3 years, and most of those visits were requests for financial assistance. You complained to your father that spending time with me was inconvenient, and you only showed interest in my house when you decided you wanted a larger home for your family. Your concern for my welfare has always been secondary to your concern for what you could gain from our relationship." The accuracy of Dorothy's observations was devastating. I remembered several occasions when Patricia had indeed complained about having to visit, treating it like an obligation rather than an opportunity to spend time with someone who loved her. "Vincent," Dorothy continued, turning her attention to her youngest grandson, "you have asked me for money 17 times since you turned 18. but you have never once asked me how I am feeling, or whether I need anything from you. You missed my birthday party because you claimed to be busy with work, but Annette told me she saw you posting pictures from a golf tournament on social media that same weekend. Vincent's face flushed red with embarrassment and anger. This is insane. She's trying to manipulate us from beyond the grave. The manipulation, Dorothy said, as if anticipating this exact response, has been coming from all of you. You assumed that because I am elderly, I was also foolish. You made decisions about my property and my money as if they already belonged to you, without ever asking what I actually wanted or needed. The recording paused for a moment as Dorothy seemed to collect her thoughts, and then she looked directly into the camera with an expression of absolute certainty. The will that was just read to you is completely false. I created it specifically to test your reactions and confirm what I already suspected about your motivations. Dorothy's words hit the room like a physical blow. Lawrence stumbled backward, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and growing rage. Patricia let out a strangled gasp, while Vincent grabbed the edge of Dorothy's coffee table, as if he needed physical support. My real will, Dorothy continued from the screen, is currently locked in safe deposit box number 247 at First National Bank on Southwest Morrison Street. It has been there for 3 months, along with detailed instructions for my actual attorney, Theodore Wilson, who works with the firm of Wilson & Associates downtown. This can't be legal, Lawrence sputtered, his voice cracking with desperation. Benjamin, surely this doesn't override the official will. This could be anyone on that video. It could be doctored or fake. Benjamin was staring at the screen with fascination and growing respect. Actually, Lawrence, if this recording can be authenticated and if there is indeed another will that was executed properly, then yes, it would supersede any previous documents. Dorothy smiled on the screen, an expression of quiet satisfaction that I remembered from the times when she had outmaneuvered Lawrence during family arguments. I know you are probably questioning the authenticity of this recording, so I have included several details that only I would know. Lawrence, you have a scar on your left shoulder from falling off your bicycle when you were 9 years old, trying to impress Sally Henderson from down the street. Patricia, you still sleep with the stuffed rabbit I gave you when you were 6, though you told your husband you threw it away years ago. Vincent, you borrowed $200 from me last Christmas and claimed it was for your mother's gift, but you actually spent it on lottery tickets. Each revelation was like a precision strike. I watched their faces change as they realized Dorothy had been far more observant and aware than they had ever imagined. She had been collecting these details for years, storing them away as proof of her mental acuity for exactly this moment. Annette, Dorothy said, turning her attention to me through the camera, has been my true companion and support for the past 17 years. While the rest of you were busy with your own lives, she spent every day making sure I was comfortable, healthy, and never lonely. She is the only one among you who loved me unconditionally, without any expectation of financial reward. The warmth in Dorothy's voice when she spoke about me was unmistakable, and I felt tears starting to gather in my eyes. Even from beyond the grave, she was still protecting and defending me. Therefore, Dorothy announced with the finality of a judge delivering a verdict, I am leaving my entire estate to Annette Morrison. This includes my house, all savings and investment accounts totaling approximately $2.8 million, my jewelry collection, and any other assets I own at the time of my death. The silence that followed was profound and absolute. Vincent's mouth hung open as if he had forgotten how to close it. Patricia made a sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. Lawrence's face had turned an alarming shade of purple as the full implications of Dorothy's announcement sank in. Furthermore, Dorothy continued, clearly enjoying the thoroughness of her revelation, I want all of you to understand that this decision was not made in anger or spite, but after careful consideration of how each of you has treated me throughout my life. Annette earned this inheritance through 17 years of genuine love, care, and devotion. The rest of you assumed you would receive it simply because you exist. At that moment, As if Dorothy had orchestrated every detail with supernatural precision, the house phone rang. Benjamin glanced at the caller ID and his eyebrows rose in surprise. "It's Wilson and Associates," he announced. The timing was so perfect, it almost seemed impossible. But I remembered Dorothy's obsession with punctuality and her love of dramatic timing. She had clearly calculated exactly how long the fake will reading and video playback would take, down to the minute. Benjamin answered the phone and put it on speaker. "This is Theodore Wilson from Wilson and Associates. I was instructed by my client Dorothy Morrison to contact this number at exactly 2:30 p.m. today, 30 minutes after her scheduled will reading. Is the Morrison family present?" "We're all here," Benjamin replied, his voice carefully professional despite the chaos surrounding him. "Excellent. I have Dorothy Morrison's actual last will and testament in my possession, and I need to schedule an appointment to execute her final wishes properly." Lawrence found his voice at last, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "This is fraud. This whole thing is a setup." "Sir," Theodore Wilson replied calmly, "I have been working with Dorothy Morrison for the past 4 months to ensure that her final wishes were legally sound and properly documented. Every aspect of this process has been reviewed by multiple attorneys and notarized according to Oregon state law. If you would like to contest the will, that is certainly your right, but I assure you that everything was done correctly." Patricia finally spoke, her voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "Annette, did you know about this? Did you help her plan this whole charade?" I looked at each of them calmly, feeling a peace I hadn't experienced in years. Dorothy had given me more than just an inheritance. She had given me validation and justice after a lifetime of being treated as lesser than. Dorothy told me about her plans 3 weeks before she died. She wanted me to understand what was happening and why she had made these decisions. "You manipulative little witch," Lawrence spat, his composure finally cracking completely. "You poisoned her mind against her own family. You turned our mother into a stranger." "No, Uncle Lawrence," I replied quietly. "You did that all by yourselves." The Dorothy on the screen seemed to have one final message, as if she had anticipated even this exchange. "I hope that someday you will all understand that love and respect cannot be bought or inherited. They must be earned through actions and genuine care. Annette earned my love and trust every single day we spent together. I am proud to leave everything to her, and I know she will use this inheritance wisely and with the same kindness she has always shown me." The video ended with Dorothy smiling directly into the camera, her expression serene and satisfied. The laptop screen went dark, leaving us all sitting in the aftermath of her perfectly orchestrated revelation. The silence stretched on until Theodore Wilson's voice came through the phone speaker. "I can meet with all of you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to review the official will and begin the probate process. Miss Morrison, as the primary beneficiary, you'll need to bring identification and be prepared to sign several documents." "I'll be there," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. Lawrence, Patricia, and Vincent sat in stunned silence as the weight of their situation finally sank in. They had lost everything they had assumed was rightfully theirs, and they had no one to blame but themselves. Dorothy's plan had worked flawlessly, and justice had finally been served. Lawrence, Patricia, and Vincent faced devastating consequences that extended far beyond their financial disappointment. Lawrence lost his position as a financial planner when several clients learned about the family situation and questioned his judgment and character, wondering how someone who couldn't understand his own mother's estate planning could be trusted with their investments. His reputation in Portland's financial community was permanently damaged when word spread about how he had pressured an elderly client, his own mother, to sign over power of attorney, and had presumptively divided her assets before her will was even read. Patricia and her husband were forced to abandon their plans for a larger home and faced ongoing tension in their marriage when he learned about her years of neglecting Dorothy while expecting an inheritance. Vincent's business ventures collapsed when potential investors discovered his entitled attitude toward family wealth and his pattern of asking elderly relatives for money, making them question his work ethic and financial responsibility. The three siblings became cautionary figures in their social circles, known as the family members who had been so cruel and presumptuous that their own mother had orchestrated an elaborate deception to teach them about character and consequences. As I established the Dorothy Morrison Memorial Foundation for Elder Care using my grandmother's generous inheritance, I reflected on the elegant justice of her final gift to me. Not just the financial security I had never expected, but the validation that genuine love and daily acts of kindness matter more than blood relations or social expectations, and that sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply allowing people to face the natural consequences of their own choices.